Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 244. Subscribe to our mailing list to receive weekly updates and exclusive content delivered right to your inbox. Go to drfrancesrichards.com. That's drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. That's drfrancesrichards.com, drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. We promise we won't spam you or sell your information. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. CEO of her family business, actress and former star of Bravo Invite Only Cabo, who has now started her own podcast platform titled The MND Show, which is streamed through Dash Radio. Welcome, Bianca Banks.
Thank you for having me.
I have given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your businesses?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So basically, I am the CEO of our family business. My father was a pharmacist as well, and he came from the Midwest. He started his own pharmacies here in Los Angeles, Southern California in the 70s. We worked together to basically build the business. And so he's now passed on. And so I continued the family legacy. And so I have that component. And then also my daughter and I have recently launched our own podcast, as you mentioned, the MND Show. And it is streamed through Dash Radio. And we are also on all podcast platforms.
Talk about launching the podcast and your why.
Wow. Okay. So we wanted to, like my daughter and I, we've always had great conversation. We've always been very, very close. And through those conversations and the relationship that we have, we always received really tremendous feedback as far as like my parenting or just like the way that we would be able to speak to one another. And I felt that being a mother and in raising her, that it was very important to have that platform of conversation as she navigated through life, because oftentimes our youth, it's like when you're raised by, it's especially typically in Black homes, it's kind of like do as I say, not as I do. And there's not like an openness for communication. And I think that oftentimes because there's the lack of, our youth tends to turn to outside influences. And some of those can obviously be bad because a lot, it's like now there's not really like counseling in high schools or counselors or things like that. And especially now because we're in the pandemic. But I just found it, very instrumental for us to have an open line, an open relationship as far as communication, not like just do whatever you want and, you can be free to do whatever you want. But if there's ever an issue that you need to discuss with me, that I would be open and willing to have a conversation without being judgmental, still guiding you as a parent, but not being judgmental. So our podcast was basically formed to kind of bridge that gap between mother and daughter and navigate through certain issues, encouraging a discussion and a platform that promotes a safe space. And hopefully through those conversations, we can help other mother and daughter relationships form a stronger bond. And so that's kind of how it started.
You mentioned the loss of your father. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge sympathy for that. So, and thank you for sharing about your father being such a pioneer back in the 70s. We always want to give respect and honor to entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs. And so that's pretty incredible. So I would be remiss if I didn't say my sincere sympathy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. People often ask me who are my biggest heroes, who has been the most influential in my life. And, obviously it would have to be my father. When I was younger, I could not understand why I couldn't really go on weekends and like play with my friends or, have social activities because my dad would always take me to work with him. I was always with him. And there was no like sleeping in, nothing like that. And through that, now I realize he was grooming me for greatness, really. And now, I appreciate those lessons and being raised kind of like with the iron hand so much because it just played so much in a part of my development and my being serious about life and serious about parenting and serious about my career and success. And I think that my biggest accomplishments are my children, obviously. And it's so important to be a parent that can help to design and to shape your children's future.
And Bianca, you talked about your daughter and you guys launched the podcast, but you also mentioned children. So give a shout out to your children.
Absolutely. So my daughter, her name is Jasmine, and she is now a young adult child. Well, she's not that young, but I still consider her the baby. So she's 26 years old. And my son, I have a little one and he's 9 years old. So it's kind of interesting seeing kind of like, I guess, like the gap between them, but also how close they are and how close we all are. But those are my little legacies. So I'm so proud of them.
And speaking of legacy, when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
That's such a great question. I was recently speaking with my aunt, and I had attended, unfortunately, a funeral, but we were discussing the obituary. And my aunt, she was basically discussing with me that about reading this individual's obituary and what did it say, and that the obituary contains like the footprint of your life. That is who they are. And I totally believe that. And I think that for me, again, legacy carries on with your children. And I think the success of that legacy, you can see it as your children try to promote that and try to do whatever they can to have your legacy to live for years and years and generations forward. So I think that that's the most important thing. Like as we see now with, with so many that came before us with MLK, with John Lewis, and those people that we try to really pay homage to that definitely left an indelible footprint. And we take responsibility and honor and privilege in being able to walk in those footsteps.
You talked about launching on Dash Radio. What was your decision when someone's listening and they're like, I want to do a podcast. Should I launch on Dash Radio? Talk about the decision to launch there and why.
Absolutely. So it's not a decision. You definitely have to be vetted and asked to join the network. And so I was really quite honored that they wanted to find placement for our show because it's really hard. Now it's like before, meaning in, I guess, previous years, I think that you would kind of like have to pitch shows to certain networks and certain platforms. And it was like, it just spoke volumes that they actually came to us and they wanted to find placement for our show. And it showed that the importance of a relationship between a mother and daughter and the voice and the influence that it can have on listeners. Yeah. So I actually was looking for a producer, and my producer works for Dash Radio, and he basically took our show and our platform to Dash. And, he was like, I think this is great. I think that these ladies are really doing something tremendous. And that's important because I think, it's like, I'm kind of like old school, because I'm raised old school. So it was, it's like the way I was raised versus the way my daughter was raised in a different environment. I think that it's important to be able to still reach back and to still have like class and dignity and all those things that I think sometimes today we get lost in, especially with the millennial generation. And my daughter is a millennial. So it's kind of cool to see that, to see her perspective, which is, I think, another reason why it was important for us to be on a large listening platform like Dash Radio. I think it's important to navigate the millennial lives versus our lives, because I think I'm Generation X. So I think that was important for us, that Dash wanted to bring that to the platform and to their listeners.
And I think what's profound about that, Bianca, is the fact that you are crossing several generations and even bringing in, from the parental standpoint, you have a 9-year-old, which is a totally different generation. So I think that you're reaching across several generations and letting your voices be heard. So that's pretty powerful. So thanks for that. When you're talking about the way that you've structured your podcast, is it a conversation between you and your daughter? Are you having guests? Talk about the format of your podcast.
Yeah, sure. So it actually changes from episode to episode. We started out with a component of interviewing certain people, certain celebrities, certain influencers. But then we did not want to do that every time, because it's kind of like when you're in the interviewing mode, you're not in the discussion mode sometimes. And so my daughter, she kind of articulated to me that she did not want to have somebody that we interview every single time, that she wanted to still have like discussion topics or current event topics, or, things that are going on that are relevant with the culture and the community, because it gave the listeners a chance to hear us problem solve and give opinions on certain things. So now our platform kind of changes from episode to episode. And then we also, because we launched in the pandemic, we also didn't want, and obviously we're living in history. So the pandemic is like, it's huge. It's something that you can't just sweep under the rug. So then we tried to kind of create shows that weren't about that every time, every single episode, but also you kind of have to speak to the importance of this current global pandemic, because it's not just here in the United States, here in the city of Los Angeles, it's global. And so I think also it's just important that we kind of touched on those things, but then still in anything mother and daughter, or if we had guests, we would kind of bring it back to kind of like things that pulled at our heartstrings or were close to us, but also as it related to the guest.
So if you had to pitch the hottest topic and episode, which topic and episode would it have been? And what was the topic?
Wow, that's a great question. Obviously, episode 1 is like, that's always like where you have the most listeners, because people are trying to kind of fill you out and kind of like figure out, okay, can I continue with this? Can I marry this show or can I not? Outside of episode 1, I think that over the summertime, one of the biggest topics that we had was like, we talk about television shows and movies a lot, because that's kind of a lot of what people are doing right now because we're at home. And I think one of the biggest episodes or most impactful was we had an episode on HBO's Lovecraft Country, which is one of the writers is Jordan Peele. It was important, one of the most important, because, as we went through the summer, we had, we went from pandemic to, what was happening with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. We had then a movement incited. We had a rebirth of Black Lives Matters. We had these global protests, all these changes with history and with acknowledgement and with removing or trying to improve what had been done to people of color, regardless if you were in America, South America, the UK, Europe, Africa. It was, and we still are going through that movement. But this show, Lovecraft Country, it is based in the Jim Crow South. And as the show, it kind of like marries music from today to music from the past. They highlight Sarah Vaughan, Miles Davis, and they place an importance on certain things that definitely should be highlighted from our past and from our culture, but also liken it to the millennial generation. And I just think it was one of the most important television shows on this summer. And I think it still is. And we're so excited to see season 2, but I think that was one of our highest episodes.
Bianca, I want you to have a monologue with someone, and this is the person in your life that has given you the most profound advice. And I want you to talk to that person, mention their name, and what would you say, and what advice did they give you?
You're going deep. Oh my goodness. That was unexpected. That was an unexpected question. Well, obviously I would have a monologue with my father. And it's funny that you do mention that, because oftentimes I find myself reaching back to those times and those moments and those instances that we had where they were definitely teachable or teaching periods, but I couldn't understand. And so now that I do understand, I think that there were so many different things that my father taught me, and my mother too, but I was definitely like my father's child. And I remember one important thing that stuck out. He said to me that it's lonely at the top. And I think he said that because we never really had like a household where we had a lot of people over. There were never, a lot of visitors, because my father and my mother, who's also a healthcare provider, she's a nurse, they were working long hours. And I think that their focus was the family and the home and us, their children. And I think that he was saying that as you move up, as you climb the ladder of success, you won't need a lot of friends. You won't need, or you will see who's important and who is not important, and who can play into your moral fabric, in so many words. I think now I'm at the point of my life where even during the pandemic, so many of people that I would say that were my friends and close friends, those relationships have diminished in a lot of capacity, but it's not like a sadness. I think that, in life we have a journey. And I think through the journey that God places certain people in your life for certain reasons. And I think that he removes for certain reasons as well. Now that my daughter and I have these continuous conversations about this, because literally it's us all the time. It's us on the weekends. It's us with my mother. It's just us as a family, as a unit. So I can appreciate that. I don't really have a lot of time to just dispose, to be wasted. And I think that that's one of the biggest things I've also learned also from him, is that time is the most valuable commodity, because it's something no matter what, no matter your wealth, no matter what disposable income that you have, et cetera, it's something that you can't buy. You can never buy time, and you can never buy it back. And now I just choose to spend my time very wisely and very preciously. And so I think that would be a conversation that him and I would have. And I don't know, because my father was very strict. Like, my father was Catholic. Like, we went to the Vatican Catholic. His sisters were nuns, and he was a very serious individual. And I don't know, I often think about how he would feel about my reality television component, even though doing the show, obviously, like, you have to just like unzip everything. Like, there's really no secrets. But I think that our cast, and especially the lead, Larry Sims, and myself, we really went into it with a notion of, we're going to raise the bar, and there's certain things that we're just not going to do. We're not going to kind of go there. And one of the biggest things is like profanity. Like, I never used profanity on the show. Frustrated, yes, but there was just certain things. There were certain ways that we chose to demonstrate to those that are looking and that are, that we're influencing, how important it is to carry yourself in a certain way. And so I think that would also be a very interesting conversation between my father and I. And would he have approved of that? But I think he would have.
Talk about being cast for the reality show. And do you think if your dad was living during that time, you would have proceeded with that?
You're so okay. Yes, I think I would have proceeded, but I was still scared. Like, it's like this is how you know that you come from good raising, so to speak, because it's like I had the fear of people, the fear of my father and me. And that came from, that was something that was inducted into me in childhood. It's like, I was always like too scared to do things that other kids were doing, like they would like sneak out and go to parties or like all these other things. And I was like, oh no, I can't do that because my dad, he'll kill me. And I kind of think like, there's obviously a lot of people that have that, that were raised like, in an African-American household. It's just like there were certain things that my white counterparts did that we just knew, no, we're not going to do that because we have to go to college. It was kind of like that. So casting for the show, my best friend, Larry Sims, celebrity hairstylist and celebrity, he was pitched a show by Bravo. And so it was basically about him on vacation with his closest friends. So he came to me and he said, is this something that you would do? And so forth. We had a lengthy conversation about it. I just decided, like not to live in a bubble and to kind of to still be able to do it, but to do it right. Because again, there's so many shows on now that, and you're just looking at this, like, I can't even believe that people would go there. Yes, you have to be real. And I think it's important that you definitely just stay rooted in who you are. And I think that if you come from that, if you stay in that, then you'll be okay. I think a lot of what we see or have seen, this trash reality television, is like people that are just going to do anything to get famous. And sometimes it works. There's people that are multi-millionaires because of it. But I'm just still concerned about the influential component of that, because while you have a platform and while you have so many people following you, millions of people, when you have that type of influence over these young people, I think it's important to just not focus on the superficial things. Like a lot of people, they're focused on material items or beauty, things like that, that's okay. But I'm saying, like, my dad, like one of the things that he was teaching us which is what I'm teaching my daughter, is invest in real estate, save your money. You know what I mean? Not just spend it. So like he would, if it was my birthday, we would go, shopping, and we would go window shopping, and he would say, oh, okay, well, how much is that? How much is, okay, do you want that? Then at the end of the day, he would say, okay, here's the money. What are you going to do with it though? Are you going to buy all those things? Or are you going to save it? Are you going to invest it? And I think that is something that I wish that I would see with these younger millionaires, even our sports people, that they do more as far as reaching back and teaching youth and their children how hard it was for them to get to where they were, the work that it took to get to that place, and to provide for generations to come. Like my daughter, she's also a college graduate. She did not have to have loans. She didn't have to get scholarships. She didn't come out of college. I'm saying that to say she did not come out with her degree having to automatically, go into debt. And that was something that I started for her when she was a baby. So I think it's like those things are more important too. That was kind of like what I wanted to bring to the platform. Yes, I'm a mother. Yes, I'm also entertainment business, but this is how you can do it. And this is how you can do it right and with eloquent.
Bianca, talk to a younger you. What advice would you give to a younger Bianca?
That's a wonderful question. Listen, be patient. You don't have to touch the pot to know it's hot. To be, I was always, and I still am, kind, but, I would think definitely it would be just to listen.
I love that word, listening. Speaking of listening, what is the resounding sound and message that your generation is saying to us?
I definitely think that our generation is a little tricky because we are the Generation X. That means that we're kind of like in the middle of like old school and new school. And which is great because I can go back to, like, I was watching this thing the other day about Rick James. My daughter's like, who's Rick James? And I'm like, what? I still have like memories of going to like Tina Marie concerts or seeing the Jackson 5. And I think that as we navigate and we're getting older, I think it's important to emphasize those grassroots, but also take that into the newer generation. And I think that obviously if you do that, then your flames is still continues, and so I think that's just the most important thing. So that's probably what we're trying to say. Carry the torch.
There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or a business that's dominating that you admire and why.
There are so many. I will say that this whole thing, like social media and exposure is just so different from when I grew up. I mean, we did not have cell phones. Even in college, like as I graduated with my undergraduate studies, we didn't have phones. Like a phone was like a huge thing. It was like, oh, you have a phone. And like pagers were kind of like just starting out, or like two-way communication pagers, things like that. And I think that the ability to reach so many so easily is just astounding. It's like if you wanted to contact somebody or to meet someone, like you would have to like know someone, or you would have to look to see where they were going to be, or you would write a letter. Like I remember a girl in high school, she loved Elizabeth Taylor, and she would write her these letters and she wrote back, and it's like, that's such a personal thing. And now it's like, oh, let me just DM somebody. Let me just, or where everybody's going to be. Or it's like the veil of privacy there's like zero to none. You can be in these people's homes. You can be where they are. And I just think that for people that are fortunate enough to be able to reach so many millions of people, I think it's so important to be positive, to be real, but to be positive. Like, for example, there was like an instance with Khloe Kardashian and this young African-American woman, Jordan Woods. And it was like that the girl had kissed her now boyfriend again. But the girl, like Jordan was like really, really young. She was a young woman, like 19 or 20 or something like that. And I think, and it started like Khloe just really like she unfollowed her, or she kind of tweeted about her and bashed her. And I felt that was so mean, because you should be at Khloe's level of success and level of exposure and level of influence, like trying to teach younger people how to navigate through those issues without being a bully or without being nasty. And this young woman, she was like, I'm getting, like she went on to the red table talk about it. And she was saying that like she had been bullied and her brother had been bullied and he was still in high school, and like all the, and I felt like we could do better, that we can do better than that. And so I think that our mission, again, like at the MND Show, is to grow our audience and to be able to influence so many and to be able to have discussions in a positive way.
And what can we do right now to support the MND Show?
Wonderful. So the MND Show is, you can follow our Instagram, which is at the MND Show. And the hosts, myself, Bianca Banks, and my daughter, Jasmine Shannon. And all of our information is on our personal Instagram pages and our websites. And also to spread the word. I mean, that's just like something that just goes back, that comes before us. It's important to spread the word, and it's important to be positive. And it's important to help and extend arms and to promote one another instead of hating one another. And I think that too is like one of our biggest problems with the Black and Brown communities, is that we oftentimes, once we're in a position of we don't reach back so that everybody can have. So I think that would be great. And I think that those are one of the biggest ways to help us and to support us.
I just hit followed.
Thank you so much.
Tell us what you are most grateful for right now in your life.
Well, I think it goes back to listening. I'm most grateful to be able to listen. I'm most grateful that I'm able to be calm. I'm most grateful for my spirituality. I think that it's something that I work on every day, but it's so important to me. And I'm most grateful for my children. I'm most grateful that my daughter also has a very committed sense of spirituality. I'm most grateful for my parents. I'm most grateful for having my mother still and to be able to care for her. Those are the things I'm grateful for.
Bianca, what was that aha moment that you knew that your businesses were going to be successful?
When my father passed away in 2006. So in 2005, and he passed away from cancer, from colorectal cancer. But when he found out that, his disease was terminal, he wanted to actually dissolve all of the businesses. And I remember exactly where I was when my mom and dad called me about that. And I was so upset because I wanted to, I was telling them no, and just to let me, to give me a chance and that I can do it. And I was very young when I came into that position. I was actually around my daughter's age. And I think that for me, the aha moment, it happens daily now because now that I'm a little bit more older and I'm a little bit more well versed and mature, right? Because maturity is the ability to accept responsibility. And I think that because I have that, I think that daily I'm having aha moment. If I would have done this, if I would have done that. But also, I don't regret or wish to erase anything because it's those moments that help form who you are. Like all the puzzle pieces are coming together. And I think that at this point in my life, I just feel so blessed and I feel so secure in who I am.
Let's talk about give, get. What do you want to give and what do you want to get?
Give. I'm such a giver. I think that's one of my biggest downfalls in life is that I want to give, give, give. I will embrace, I will love, it's if I can take you in, I will. And I think that too, if you want to do that, that's okay. But the biggest part of that is, to your point, is getting. And I think that the best present for me is giving without expectation. I think that it's so important to just be able to give because you want to, because that it's in your heart. Yeah. So I feel very fulfilled and I feel very genuine in being able to do whatever I can for anyone just because it's who I am.
What do you need right now that you don't have to move the needle forward with the MND show?
That's a great question. I think I'm kind of stuck actually, because it's quite something to learn about promotion of a podcast and being able to self-promote in a pandemic. Like I have a very strong desire, and I will do this, to launch a podcast tour in different cities and different communities, but it's just so difficult to do that right now. Because I also think that even though we've really have propelled everyone, not just me, but like even my mom, and she was born in the 30s, it's really interesting because she'll launch a Zoom call or she texts all the time. And I think it was quite something that all of us were launched into technology so much because of the pandemic, but also there is a void of actual socialization or intimacy that you have being face to face. So even though we do certain things remotely because of the podcast, I think it will really grow tremendously if we're able to do an in-person tour.
Because you are a podcaster, we are going to reverse roles. And so I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer the question. And the question is, Bianca, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
Well, maybe some fun stuff like who my favorite singer is. I think that would be something I would like to ask myself. And the answer to that would be Whitney Houston. I think she's phenomenal. Her voice is velvet to me. That would be the one.
Thank you for that. And we've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And if something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. And so are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
I'm ready.
The last movie you saw?
I don't remember. Pass.
Your favorite color?
Pink.
Your favorite dance song?
Shaka Khan, I Know You, I Live You.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Tacos.
Work out or hit the couch?
Workout.
Your favorite dance song?
The same. Shaka Khan, I Love You, I Live You.
You relax doing what?
Watching movies, binge watching.
And if you could do anything or go anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
I would go to Europe, specifically Paris, France, because my son and I had a trip planned last year, and he really kind of on me about wanting to go this year, even though I don't think it's going to be possible. But that is the one place I would go, and that is the reason why.
Bianca, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, and you don't have to rush through this, why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and to do business with you? And feel free to leave all your social media handles.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a delight. And I think this is a great way to start my day. And yeah, thank you so much again. My Instagram is It's Bianca Banks, and as well as my website. And the show is at the MND Show. And we're on all social platforms as well as my Instagram. And also we're on Dash Radio station Dash Talk X on Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Pacific time, and Wednesday mornings, 6 a.m. Pacific time.
Thank you, Bianca. That's a wrap.
Thank you so much.
Our guests have sent us so much swag, books, and giveaways this year. I can't wait to announce our monthly winner. So if you want exclusive content delivered right to your inbox and to enter into our monthly drawing, go to drfrancisrichards.com and subscribe to our mailing list. That's drfrancisrichards.com. drfrancisrichards.com. That's drfrancisrichards.com, and subscribe to our mailing list. We promise we will not spam you or sell your information.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.